Is everybody here? Let's see, 1, 2, 3,
No.
4, 5.
Rob and Jack.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You have a quorum, if you desire.
You were trying to help me along there, were you, Peter?
No, it's all your choice. I thought you were pausing because you didn't know whether you could go or not.
No, I just extending a courtesy, but I think
Yep.
7:05 is the limit of my courtesy. I am whipped. Lots of snow blowing today.
My niece is she's with me tonight, and she was helping me shovel the driveway yesterday. And she's like, Aunt Penny, she said, do you have a snowblower? And I'm like, yeah. She said, well, why don't you use it? I'm like, because I never get it maintained. So when it snows, it never works. Good exercise.
Okay, we'll get going. Now, Rob, I am plugged in with a wire.
Okay.
And I'm still getting a note here that my internet connection is unstable. So
that sounds good, Chris.
Where's your cat filter, Chris?
Uh-oh.
I liked Andy's math.
Spoke too soon.
hold on 1 second here. God damn it.
Anybody else streaming in the household?
I don't have the Wi-Fi even on, Rob.
Oh, okay. This sounds like it's a Comcast call, Chris.
Sorry about that, everybody. All right, so if I drift in and out or go black, you know what's going on. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular virtual meeting for February 16th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ask that everybody mute their cell phones or other electronic devices. And also mute your microphone when you're not speaking to improve the sound quality of the meeting. Rob, can you please do a roll call for attendance?
I will, thank you. Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn?
Here.
Trustee Coladarchi?
Here.
Trustee Kripe?
Here.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
President Rintz?
We're all here, yes, present. Okay, next order of business is the pledge. Bob, did you receive my request to pledge tonight?
I did not, but I'm happy to.
Thank you, please do.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the
the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
Quorum check, Rob.
Yeah, sure. Believe it or not, we're looking at the month of March, the notorious month of March where this whole thing started. So the meetings are the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th. Does anyone have a conflict with any one of those dates?
I might have a conflict on the 16th.
16th?
Same here, Rob. Same here. The 16th is potentially a problem for me.
Okay, thank you.
What does it look like relative to the remote meetings going forward? Does it look like it's going to go on into March?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. I am likely going to be heading back out east, but if I can do it Zoom wise, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I will definitely be remote for next month.
Okay. Thank you all.
Okay, public comment. This is the time of the evening where anyone from the public can address council on any item that they wish to that is not on this evening's agenda. Kristen, do you have anybody in the queue or from emails or other correspondence who wishes to address us on items not in the agenda?
President Rintz, we did receive comments in advance for the future agenda item. At this time, I would like to recognize all of the attendees who are in the room. And I'd appreciate it at this time if you could please use the Zoom platform to raise your hand, so we are aware that you can use that functionality, and that's how we're going to recognize people for public comment. So if everyone in the room at this time could please use the raise your hand feature and keep your hand raised. So Louise, I don't see your hand raised. Can you use the raise hand feature on the bottom of your screen?
She's here for the other issue though, Kristen.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Okay, now I'm gonna lower all hands. At this time, would anyone like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Please raise your hand using the Zoom platform. I see no hands, President Rintz.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Louise, hope you're feeling better. Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing from you later in the meeting, but it's good to see your name up on the screen, and hopefully you're ready to jump in here and help us get this thing sorted out tonight. All right, item number 5 is reports. We'll start with trustees. You guys can raise your hands if you have a report you would like to give. Not seeing any hands. So I'll move forward. Village attorney, any report?
No report tonight.
Okay, village manager.
Sure. Had a little interest on the snow event. Monday into today, reports are 13 to 16 inches of snow, depending at the east side, probably a little bit more than the far west side. Say an average of 15 is probably what we had. Crews started to transition to 12-hour shifts on Monday morning, and they were working beginning at 10 o'clock last night for the second shift, and then of course into 10 o'clock this morning. They were focused on keeping the main roads passable, and then kept it up all day, all night and all day. Residential refuse collections, we were able to get most of that completed. They're going to wrap up whatever was missed tomorrow, which is typically their off day on Wednesday. And commercial refuse collections will resume tomorrow after not being accessible today. We were able to get most of the alleys open. There's still a couple that need some work, primarily on the east side, but they're working on it diligently. We've also utilized staff from water and electric, so every available vehicle or truck that we can put a blade on it, we've done so. And I would expect the haul out operations to last the rest of this week. So happy to take any questions that you might have.
Seeing none.
I don't have any questions. I would just like to express our thanks, and please pass it on to Public Works Department, because these days have got to be brutal for them, and we are so grateful for all they do. It's been unbelievable. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pass on. They've done a nice job.
One quick question. I had that they have, and I met my garbage guy because I thought there was no way in Hades that he would be coming today, and I saw him pull up the truck, and I had to run out. But fortunately, I was plowed. If they had the off day on Wednesday, is there something that says if something happens, like an event like last night's snow, that we can move them to Wednesday?
Yeah.
Or is that?
Yeah. So they work. Their typical routes are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday, they work 4 10-hour days, and Wednesday is usually the day we use in case there's a holiday that we need to back up into. And when you have events like this, they're going to be in tomorrow collecting the rest of the homes that weren't collected today.
Okay.
So yes, they'll be in, and then they'll be all fully deployed into the commercial districts as well. As we roll out the rest of the refuse changes, we're going to be transitioning to a 5-day-a-week work schedule, which will keep them here as well. But they're in town every day because of the commercial collection, 7 days a week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Rob?
Rob,
Yeah.
just a quick question. Rob. I had some questions from neighbors about sidewalk plowing. What do you figure the schedule is on that?
I would expect them to be hitting the sidewalks by tomorrow.
Okay.
maybe some overnight, but they're really going to be focusing on hauling out the massive amounts of snow in the commercial areas and the parking lots.
You know,
Sorry, go ahead, Trustee Lanfear.
Oh, Penny's frozen.
She looks very pensive right now.
Oh, sorry. There's some delay going on here. I apologize. Yeah. You know, something I would love to think about, and, you know, as we're in the middle of snow season now, is, you know, whether there's an appetite in the village for putting more resources. I understand that. Birds keeping the sidewalks in terms of, you know, what it would, and if people want that done. It's just, I know it's a fine balance, but our sidewalks are so used, and sometimes I worry about them in terms of whether, you know, we have the sufficient budgetary resources devoted to keeping up with what the community wants. And I don't know what the community wants, but it's just a question that I've had. So
understood. It's
something to think about this year.
Depending upon the event, it's usually a balancing act. But typically with school being remote today, they knew that they could have a little bit more time to keep the roads open, but they'll be tending to the sidewalks pretty carefully and pretty quickly.
Yep, I think it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the roads are the priority, but it's just in terms of then the maintenance, you know, once it's done. So anyway, yep. Just a question to think about before we hit the next budget cycle.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Rob? None? We'll move forward as the village manager, village president, that's me. Just one quick announcement. Received a press release about 3 o'clock this afternoon. The Cook County Health Department issued mitigation order number 2021-4, which is an easing of mitigation measures in suburban Cook County, basically effective immediately. This order increases capacity limits in bars, restaurants, and event spaces to the lesser of 40% of occupancy or 50 people. So the good news is the county is lightening up on their mitigation order, and I don't know what that means in the scheme of things, but it's nice to know that we're heading in the right direction. So it feels good that we're making some progress on that front. So,
Chris, that basically means that the county is now in line with the state.
Or the rest of the state.
With the rest of the state.
With the rest of the state. I understand that. There still seems to be this question on the vaccine, but we won't get into that tonight, please. We don't have the time for it. So. No, we don't have the time for it.
No. This is about our fire department.
Please, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, there was some attempt being made to have the fire department paramedics given the authority to give vaccines. Is that still out there as a possibility?
It's still out there, and we're working on a closed site for teachers and, you know, essential workers in 1B at this time. Not open to the public yet. We don't have approvals for that. So there'll be a press release coming in the next few days about that site.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Item 5A is a motion to extend village president's declaration of emergency. Village attorney Peter Friedman will review another extension in the Winnetka emergency declaration. Peter.
So, as you know, throughout the pandemic, except for a gap, the village president has issued an emergency declaration regarding staffing and emergency procurement. And the current emergency declaration expires at the end of this meeting. And for a long time, you remember you were renewing it every meeting. And that seemed to be a little inefficient right now. So we've written this so it will, with your approval, and all it requires is a motion, a second, and a roll call vote. to extend the declaration to, Kristen, help me, April 20th?
Correct.
Correct, April 20th.
April 20th. And that's it. It's a continuation of the existing declaration for another couple months, give or take a couple days.
Peter, when does, and I have no problem with this, of course, but, you know, under what circumstances does this whole declaration of emergency go away?
If the basis for all of these are the governor's declaration, disaster declarations. He keeps renewing those every month.
Okay.
That gives health departments the authority to do things, that gives the Illinois Emergency Management Agency the authority to do things, and it triggers the president's authority to issue the declarations.
Okay, so we will that will fold once the governor backs away from that.
Once we move into phase 5, then maybe the disaster declaration will go away, but we're not going to be moving into phase 5 for, that might not be this year.
Okay.
Other questions for Peter? Okay, may I have a motion to extend the duration of the village president's November 23rd, 2020 emergency or declaration of emergency until the end of April 20th, 2021 meeting of the village council?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, approval of the agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Not seeing any hands raised. May I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
That's a frozen yes.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you, Penny. That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to the consent agenda, and I'm going to ask the village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Approval of Village Council meeting minutes for January 19th, 2020 regular meeting, January 21st, 2021 special meeting, and January 26th, 2021 special meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated January 29th, 2021 through February 11th, 2021 in the amount of $400,541.16. Resolution number R22, 2021, authorizing a purchase order for the Commercial District Floral Program. Resolution number R23, 2021, approval of an amendment to contracts for the purchase of parkway trees. Resolution number R27, 2021, streetscape sign purchase. Resolution number R29, 2021, phase 3 streetscape contracts. And resolution number R28, 2021, sidewalk and curb replacement program.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. All right, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Not at all. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item number 8, ordinances and resolutions. 8A is resolution numbers R25, 2021 and R26, 2021, stormwater engineering services, and this is for adoption. Last November, the council approved a financing plan for the completion of a long-term stormwater management improvement plan to provide flood relief. This next step will advance stormwater detention projects for Duke Childs Field, the Skokie Playfields, and the Park District Golf Course. The two subject resolutions would approve two separate contracts for the engineering work associated with the design of the projects. And just so everybody else understands that something that's going on in the background here is obviously we're re-engaged with the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. And so a lot of the documentation that Strand and subsequently Rick Jacobson will be providing are items that we are needing to roll into the final license agreement with the Forest Preserve. So with that said, we'll go ahead and turn this over to our Director of Engineering, Jim Bernal, and let him tell us a story. Jim.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, President Rentz. Can you guys hear me okay? Good, okay. All right, I am very pleased for this agenda item tonight. We can get started here on the actual design of our next phase. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I got a quick little PowerPoint for you. Can you guys see that PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Just want to making sure I don't have any technical glitches. Thank you.
Can you make it more full screen or no?
I should be able to. Not sure why it's not.
Okay.
Jim, you might need to share the different screen. I think you're sharing the speaker's notes screen. Do you have another screen where the full screen is showing up?
Yes, I do actually.
So do share again and then pick that one.
Gotcha for a second. Should be the full one. Try this. Is that better? Nope.
Yes.
You guys, you see the full one?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here real quick. So the area that we'll be discussing tonight for the two engineering contracts, just to kind of put it into perspective here, can you see my cursor as I'm moving this? This is Willow Road in Hibbard. So the red dashed circle area in here is Little Duke, the Duke Child's Field, the par 3 golf course, and the 16th, 17th, and 18th hole of the golf course. I've also shown kind of a dashed in sort of purple area here. This is the rest of the golf course up there. One of the consultants, Rick Jacobson, golf course design, will be working with the Park District as it relates to redesigning that section. So I just wanted to, so we all kind of knew where we were at when we were talking through this. So to get a little bit closer here, this is Duke Child's Field. And this portion of the design here includes the underground storage. Here, there's approximately 14.2 acre feet of underground storage beneath the open fields in here. Includes the design of a new parking lot as well, and the coordination with New Trier High School for the revamping of their play fields out here. So this larger one kind of gets a different section on here. We've got Little Duke, which is located just to the north of there and south of the ice skating rink. This is also underground storage as well. There's the par 3 golf course, which includes conveyance, open storage, modifications through there. And then the south end of the existing golf course, again, holes 16th, 17th, and 18th, which includes the renovations for the enlarged stormwater storage and regrading of those holes on that side. So I've included this photo here as well. Rick Jacobson, as I noted previously, will be working on the golf course for those remaining holes to the north of here. This will include additional improvements to make the golf course more playable and maintainable after rainfall events. Anybody who's gone out there, it can get a little tricky there after it rains. And this will be where we'll be taking the excavated soil and be able to reutilize it on the remaining golf course side. So this will be some of the folks, the items that they'll be working on. So talk real quick here about the Strand. So the first one agreement will be with Strand. And what their agreement for the design here will be is they'll assist us with the intergovernmental agreement, the coordination with the design and the construction schedule to meet the requirements of the IGAs that we've got in place with the Park District, as well as the New Trier High School. As you may recall, these have critical timelines on when we can start and when we must be completed. So making sure that we coordinate all the activities will be very important for us. Preliminarily, the Strand will be out there. They'll perform, topographic surveying. We'll take additional soil borings to investigate the soil conditions out there. They'll be performing a wetland identification and delineation for the par 3 and the 18-hole golf course. As part of the 30% designs, they'll start working on the plans, the specifications. They'll update the modeling as we move along, and they'll be providing copies for the Village, Winnetka Park District, and New Trier High School the opportunity to review. At the 30% milestone, they'll also provide us with an updated cost estimate. So we want to make sure we know where the dollars are going as we develop these plans. They'll also be updating the hydraulic and hydrologic modeling, as well as we start to do the design to make sure that it's meeting the requirements that we're looking for. And then, of course, coordinating and initiating permitting with the various agencies that we'll need for final approval of this project. Next, they'll be focusing on the final engineering plans, and this will be a submittal at the 75% point. Again, provide us the updated design plans. Specifications will become a little bit more beefier. We'll update the modeling, and then of course they'll share that with the same agencies for review and comments. Again, they'll update their costs, so we've got a good idea of where everything is landing. Again, they'll update the modeling to make sure that we're meeting those requirements. And they'll start working on the post-construction maintenance program. That's going to be important about how do we reestablish these areas and how do we maintain them for the long run. And of course, they'll start working on developing the final bidding and construction documents. This will be important that we can move forward and try to coordinate the Cook County Forest Reserve project as well. So some additional services, if needed here, will be additional meetings if they have it. And then of course, assisting with public engagement, professional land surveying, and assisting us with seeking other grant funding. That's going to be important as we start to think about future phases. Anything that we can do to find some extra money is always important. So next, we'll just talk here a little bit about the Jacobson Golf Course. Their services are basically going to focus primarily on the design of the par 3, the 9-hole, and the 18-hole golf course here. They're going to be working hand in hand with Strand and Associates to make sure that the coordination is consistent, and they'll be working with the preparation of the bidding documents too. So their focus will be on the grading plan of what the golf course will look like, some of the golf course features, again, working with the Winnetka Park District to encompass some of those enhancements that they're looking to do. They'll work on the grassing plan, on how we're going to reestablish this and what the sequence of that will be. Any kind of a tree removal plan, and more importantly, the irrigation system restoration and modifications to the golf course. As we start to move this around, that'll all have to get redesigned. And of course, they'll coordinate with Strand at the 30, the 75, and the final plans to make sure that everything is working seamlessly so that we've got one good set of construction documents to go out to bid for. In addition to this, they'll also be working directly with the Winnetka Park District on their own individual meetings to make sure that we're gathering their thoughts and ideas for what they'd like to do with the golf course to the north, and making sure that it meets their long-term vision. Of course, they'll also be working with updating costs as well and making sure that when we're presenting these items to you, that staff is giving you the most up-to-date congruent number. So with that, the most important part here is the budget. So as you can see from this slide here, as part of the approved 2021 budget, the village allocated about $1.634 million for the design of these two areas. After having worked closely with Strand and Jacobson, we were able to refine that and get it down to where we know we're meeting all the milestones that we need. And we came in about $487,000 below what we estimated. So that's a significant savings here for us right out of the gate. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions that you might have.
Whoops, I have a question. Sorry, I'm not on video.
Let me unshare my screen.
Penny, Rob was up first. Could I let him go?
Oh, sorry. I was on.
Okay.
I was totally.
That's all right,
out
Penny.
Out of contact.
Don't worry about me.
I was trying to save bandwidth. Sorry.
I learned to raise my hand in class. I can't tell you. So I guess my question is on the golf course enhancements. Is that our responsibility? Is that the park? I mean, if they want to create a TPC water hole with, flamingos, what are we on the hook for, and what are they on the hook for?
Okay, Rob, I'll get you a copy of the agreement with the Park District.
Great.
That outlines the base, what I guess we could call the base building work and the fundamental things that we've agreed to do through the negotiations. It's understood with the Park District and clear in the documents that if they want to go to that level, they can definitely, and we'll accommodate them, but they're going to pay for it.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
What we talked about with them last week, just to kind of give you an update, is that Rick Jacobson is going to sit down with Mickey and I guess some representatives from the golf club or whatever it is there, and they'll start thinking about a wish list. And then when we send the project out for bid, all of the things on the Park District's wish list will show up as alternate bids. So then they can decide what they have an appetite to pay for and what they can't afford.
Perfect. That's all I need to know. That's all I need. Thanks.
Okay. Other questions?
Hey, Jim. I'm sorry, Penny, go ahead.
You're muted.
You're muted.
If you can talk about the timeline.
Go ahead, Jim.
Sure. So the timeline that we're anticipating now is with the approval of the design engineering now, we hope to have plans and specifications and the final cost estimate by end of February is what we're shooting for. So we're ready to go out to bid in March of 2022 and be ready to roll. That's the short version of it.
No, that's the too long version. My version has us bidding this project in the fall. Some of it.
So
we'll see.
Can we? So because we're talking about the 30% and then the 70. In terms of the different portions of the contract, where do you see those benchmarks being hit?
For the design part on it?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to design Duke, Little Duke, the par 3/8 all consecutively at the same time. Are you talking about construction wise or just?
Well, you have the benchmarks. You have the benchmarks in the contract for the 30% and then the 75% or whatever it is. Yeah. So the benchmarks for that is what?
Oh, so once this gets approved, we'll work consecutively with Strand to come up with the schedule on exactly when we think we're going to meet those milestones. The first one is going to be grabbing that base information, the topography, the rest of the ground soil geotechnical that we need. Obviously, it's slightly delayed with the snow on the ground, but once we gather that, that's going to create those base sheets for us in which to initiate. And then from there, there'll be about a four-month gap in order to give Rick Jacobson time to start coming up with the design, finalizing and do the modeling for the par 3, Duke Childs. That's the underground fault system. So we'll be working with Storm Trap on that. I would say your biggest gap is going to be between the 30 and the 75.
Yeah,
that's really where the meat is when we have to redo the modeling on it to get to that point. Okay,
so then what, in terms of the benchmarks, when you'll be reporting back to the council, what should we be looking for?
I would anticipate reporting back to the council when we reached about the 30%, the 75%, and then of course, obviously right before we go out to bid so we can provide, and there'll be a discussion as part of the budget presentation as well. That's why it's important to have those cost estimates so we know where we're at.
Okay, so that'll be like next fall and then?
No, once I would say sometime late spring, early summer for one, and then a little bit later in the fall time as September, October, we'll be working.
Okay, thank you. Just gives me a frame of reference. Appreciate it.
And so my question would be, what's the big difference between what President Rentz mentioned as far as a fall of this year versus March of next year? Where's the big gap, and where's the conflict or the difference coming in?
John, we don't have enough time to talk about that tonight, but you and I have had this discussion offline about the difference between commercial pace and governmental pace. And so we're going to try to get the two a little closer together.
I would add, Trustee Swerk, that I think one of the issues that could accelerate the pace would be how we would want to contract for the work, and how much work can we do simultaneously with one contractor. I know, Chris, you've mentioned that before. So how much can we get going all at one time? And of course, we have to have all the design work ready to go. But if we can get it out into the marketplace at the right interval, typically wintertime where you can get better pricing, then we could start to really get going.
So the goal is obviously to move as fast as we can. Move as fast as we can and see how things work out. Okay.
Yeah, the other thing I've been thinking about, hopefully we'll have a study session on this, is to do a like a cost plus, or a cost plus with a GMAX, which would allow us to go out and actually just bid on fee alone without finished drawings, lock down the construction duration for general conditions, and then go from there. But I wanted to explain that to all of you in a more intensive sort of information. But there's other ways to contract with this besides just finishing the drawing, sending it out for bids, and then taking the numbers. And I think it might be a little bit more efficient, and I actually think it might be more cost competitive if we look at a couple different ways.
I would like
I look forward to that study session. Thanks.
Yeah, and Jim, I'd ask you to follow up with Strand so that we can see the schedule for the delivery of the milestones for 30 and 75%, and then we can share that with the council. Of course, Strand's in the middle of designing the Cook County site right now, and I know they have the capacity to take on a lot more.
Other
Jim, I was going to ask Jim if I could go back to that budget page for a second, just to understand it. And I love, who doesn't love $500,000 under budget right off the bat here? That's great. But I'm trying to tie together the budget items to the contract items. And I heard the explanation and so on. I don't understand sort of how they relate to one another, and just to make sure it's apples and apples and so on, because the line items are very different, it sounds like to me, but maybe you can explain that.
Sure. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation now?
Yes.
Okay. So at the time that we were preparing the budgets for Duke Childs and Skokie Playfields, it was based on the overall construction estimate of where we thought construction was going to be at. And it was taken as a percentage at that time based on the anticipated difficulty of the design, which is typically between 9 and 10%. It can vary based on the size of this and the information that Strand has pre-existing in the can, their knowledge and experience of what's happening here. There's opportunities to reduce those costs slightly because we're repeating some of the same things that we've done. And then the Skokie Playfield one, that was really just a coordination and negotiation with Rick Jacobson to try to get him down as low as we possibly could. So we were able to save that cost in the times, in the hours to be able to get that significant savings that you see right there.
Okay, so the Strand contract is covering both of the budgeted issues in some way, where the Jacobson contract is just a small portion of the budget.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So Strand is obviously a part of both locations, and they came in, $997. I don't know what amount they were of the $1.6 million, but in some way, the combination of Strand and Jacobson are just way below. I mean, is that who came down, Jacobson or Strand?
Yeah, well, Jim, hold on. Yeah. Trustee Dearborn, there was quite a bit of preliminary engineering that went into the Duke Childs agreement and the Park District agreement. So some of those costs were reduced because they had already done a significant amount of modeling work to make sure that those IGAs would work from an engineering standpoint. So we did spend some money on the front end to make sure the IGAs were in good shape. So that saved us some money when it came down to the detailed engineering. So they've invested in engineering work to date.
So Rob, the budget variance is mainly from Strand and not from Jacobson.
Mainly from Strand, yes.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, and this is apples and apples, so that's a
yes.
That's a full $500,000 savings right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Good. Terrific.
Don't spend it just yet somewhere else, because
no, I understand.
I'll bet we have a significant amount of design change orders as we go through this thing.
Yeah.
It'll probably consume, not all of it, Bob, but I'll bet you 25 to 30% of that money will be spent on stuff that just comes up.
Right.
Well, that's a nice amount of money just to start here.
Yep.
Right. But if you'll recall, the agreement with New Trier High School was pretty well developed by the time it came for IGA approval. So you had the elevations figured out, some of the topo work was done. We had their plan set to work off. So, you know, that money was invested on the front end, which saved some money on the back end.
Right. Got it.
And just to add to that too, as the consultants become more familiar with the milestones and the understanding of the project, it takes away their fear knowing exactly how many hours they're going to need to meet those milestones and things. So that's a lot of cost savings in those avenues.
Yeah, both of these projects are much better informed than they were, you know, over a year ago.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, I will move this along and ask if somebody can provide me with a motion to adopt resolution R2521 authorizing an extension of the master services agreement with Strand Associates.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Coladarchi?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Next, may I have a motion to adopt resolution number R26, 2021, approving an agreement with Jacobson Golf Course Design.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Coladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
That carries as well. So both those motions carry. Jim, thank you very much. To work on that tightened up schedule, and we'll be talking next week. Okay, moving forward, we are on item 9, old business. 9A is the draft ordinance number MC 2021, demolition, delay, and GFA bonus for historic homes. David Schoen is looking for additional policy direction. Pursuant to council direction on the January study session, staff has drafted an ordinance to amend the village code to allow for a longer demolition delay and provide a gross floor area bonus to those homeowners who choose to preserve a historic or architecturally significant home. Staff has a draft ordinance for council review and is looking for further direction from the council before finalizing the ordinance and holding a public hearing on March 2nd on the proposed code amendments. And our Director of Community Development, David Schoen, is here to review.
Good evening. Thank you. So since your January 12th study session, I have been working with Attorney Friedman and Attorney Schuster on drafting an ordinance consistent with the direction you provided us in terms of extending the demolition delay period for a total of 270 days from application submittal, and then also providing a 20% gross floor area bonus for significant properties. amendment for extending the demolition delay is pretty straightforward, as you can see in the draft ordinance. The 20% GFA bonus is a little more significant to put that into effect. What we did is we created 2 review processes to provide a property owner an opportunity to receive the bonus. The first process uses the existing demolition review process. The second process is creating one, and I'll just briefly go over each of those. So as you know, we have an existing demolition review process in which the Landmark Preservation Commission reviews the home to determine whether or not a property is historic or architecturally significant. The process would be amended to provide an opportunity that if the commission does find a property is significant, the applicant could withdraw their demolition permit request and commit to preserving the property, and thus the property would qualify for the GFA bonus. The second process, again, the Landmark Preservation Commission would partake in that review, but a property owner would directly request that the LPC, the Landmark Preservation Commission, find that the property is historic or architecturally significant. If the commission does find that, then the property automatically qualifies for a 20% GFA bonus. So that's a very broad overview of the process. Also at the last meeting, some council members requested some information in terms of what may be the potential benefit of or incentive for a property owner to secure the bonus. And so we have provided you in the staff report a table showing what the maximum GFA bonus would be when applying the formula to the minimum lot area of a district. So these are examples of what that bonus would look like for a property that is found to be historic or architecturally significant. We also then looked at some recent examples of homes that the commission has found to be historic or architecturally significant to see how the bonus would play out for those properties. And so we looked the past 5 or 6 years, though we had to go back a few more years to find a property that was issued a demolition delay in the R5 district. But we looked at a handful of properties. It's a small sample to look at what was their available GFA and then what the bonus may provide them. So the yellow rectangular area there highlights what was available for the property based on the existing GFA standards, and then what the bonus amount would be for those properties. Based on this small sample, we found that nearly all of the properties had some excess gross floor area already. You know, the question is, would that be significant enough for someone to preserve the house without having a bonus? We had a recent example of a property that was found to be historic that went through our variation process, and we provided the council with information regarding that project where they pursued variations. It happened to be about 20% of GFA increase, and they made their argument for why it was necessary in that instance to preserve the historical features of mainly the front of the home. And that information is provided in the staff report. The thing I would note is, again, this bonus only grants a gross floor area bonus. The property still must meet all other zoning requirements. as well as all other development regulations. So with the 1180 Oakley example, that project also needed a total side yard setback variation. So even if this GFA bonus was in place, that property owner still would have had to have gone through our variation process to secure that variation. So if a property does receive the bonus, the ordinance is set up to require the property owner to have exterior changes or additions reviewed by the village, both initially when the addition goes into place, but also subsequent work to ensure that the architectural elements or historic elements aren't lost with projects that occur on the site. We structured the review so that staff would conduct the review. We set up the standards and guidelines that are very similar. We started with the landmark designation guidelines. I shouldn't say designation guidelines. The review guidelines we use on reviewing changes to landmark homes, and that staff would use those. If staff would determine that proposed changes would negatively impact the historic or architectural significant elements, staff denied the request, then the applicant could appeal to the city council. Other amendment features, the density bonus benefit on a property ceases when work requiring the demolition permit by the code is applied for. Also, properties found to be significant prior to a certain date. Staff is assuming that that will be the effective date of the ordinance, but properties found to be significant by the LPC prior to the adoption of the ordinance would not qualify for the bonus. So for instance, properties that are already designated as a landmark would not automatically get the bonus. They couldn't qualify for it. The thought is this tool is to be an incentive to encourage people to preserve their homes, and those property owners have already taken a step to do that. So that's how it's currently drafted. And then the effective date of the ordinance, which is standard unless directed otherwise by the council, would be the adoption date of the ordinance. When the council last discussed this issue, the council talked about a sunset option, and we'd like a little more direction from the council. When the council talked about it, you talked about 1 year from the council's adoption of the comprehensive plan that the ordinance would sunset. Generally, in drafting sunset clauses, they're usually a date specific so that everyone is put on notice exactly when the ordinance would sunset. Given that we don't know exactly when the comprehensive plan work will be completed, we don't have that definite date. So the council may decide, instead of doing the 1 year from council adoption of the comp plan, that you identify a specific number of years from the ordinance adoption, or just pick a specific date, another date you feel is appropriate. Other than doing a sunset clause, you may also want to consider just putting the community on notice that in a whereas clause in the ordinance to indicate that it's the council's intent to review amendments within a year of the comp plan's adoption. Not that the ordinance would automatically sunset, but it's your intent to review it. So Attorney Friedman and I can answer questions regarding those options. So tonight we want a direction from you in terms of is how we drafted the demolition delay, what you had in mind, as well as the bonus provisions for the GFA. Specifically, unless directed by you otherwise, we will state that properties found to be significant prior to the adoption of the ordinance would not qualify for the bonus, unless there's another date you'd like to put in that. Oh, I'm sorry. Rob just texted me that I just ran through my PowerPoint without sharing my screen. Sorry about that.
I was wondering what the yellow thing was you were referring to.
Well, I understood what you were saying.
Yeah, we got it.
It's fine.
Presentation is good. I know that you may have a slide that you might want to share at some point to frame the conversation. So
please at least provide us with that one. Thank you.
So, and then we want a direction from you in terms of the sunset clause, the specifics of that, and then finally, if you are ready then to have the public hearing on March 2nd regarding the ordinance. And that's all I have.
Hey, David, I got a question for you. On the effective date, I get it for the 20% GFA. What's the effective date for the demolition delay?
The effective date of the demolition delay. So it would be once the commission determined that the property is historic or architecturally significant.
I mean the ordinance.
Yeah, David, I think it would be any application received after the ordinance was adopted would potentially be delayed. If it was found to be historic, then they would have the authority to issue the 270.
So it's effective as to not anything in the hopper now, basically.
Correct.
Okay. And this might be more of a question for Jack, but are there things in the hopper now that we're worried about?
Yeah. We have one property, 82 Essex, which is a significant property, which is up for the first time on March 3rd. And that has been generating a lot of interest, a lot of commentary, and a lot of international interest. The guy who designed that house designed Canberra, Australia, laid it out as a city planner, amongst other many other things that he did. So that's developed interest, and people on the commission, and I think some community members have reached out to the current owner or the developer and have indicated that, or they've tried to engage him to see whether or not he has an interest in trying to save the property. And I believe there was an email back indicating that the developer would be glad to engage, but ... the property foundation was in bad shape. A lot of stuff talking about the condition of the property was not great.
Peter,
so,
is
yeah.
there any legal reason we couldn't make it effective even as to things currently in the hopper? I know there's probably a fairness or another argument we need to consider about that, but is there any legal reason we couldn't do that?
There's no legal reason you couldn't do that, as long as you treat them all separately. So we could say any complete applications we have on file as of the adoption date, it would apply to. I assume it's a complete application, or whatever language we want to use for that.
I mean, it seems to me there's two useful tools here, the GFA and the longer period. So I don't want to get into the discussion yet, but that's why I'm asking this question.
Yeah. So Peter, we could say effective X date. If you're here, you're in it.
In essence, yeah.
Cool.
David, I had a question on one of the things. There was language saying time period not to exceed 270 days. And as an annoying lawyer, I was going, oh, not to exceed. That gives me something to be annoying about if I were representing a developer or a seller. Is it possible to do this just saying time limit of 270 days in order to remove a potential point of argument on down the road? I don't see it as being a huge issue. It's just one of those things where I looked at that and I'm like, boy, that'll be something that somebody will seize on in future, because we've got this, like for instance, the house where the developer has put it back on the market. and is marketing it to see if he can sell it, and he's taken a 90-day window to try and do that. If he kept trying to do that or negotiations continued, it could go longer than 270 days. And the not to exceed, you know, it's like, I would be afraid to have something in there that would be potentially create unintended consequences. So I would just suggest to remove the not to exceed language on that point and just say 270 days. And then if it gets continued, it gets continued. But I just might be being more sensitive than I need to be.
Okay, let's get questions first. Duly noted, Jack. We need to attack that as one of the 3 policy directions that we have. But I'd like to get all the questions out for David and Peter so I can get to the public comment, and then we can deliberate on this in a little bit more depth.
Sure. One other question, David, in terms of, are you modifying you said administration or the administrative staff would take over, or would not take over, but would be responsible for making a determination on the architectural merit. I don't want to, I'm shorthanding what you were talking about. Is that a change from current policy or the current way we do things?
So staff would review and need to approve any exterior changes or additions to a property that's been designated as significant and is going to receive the 20% bonus. If a property wants the bonus and to be designated a landmark, they'd also have to receive approval of the Landmark Preservation Commission for those changes. But if a property is not designated a landmark, it would only need to be removed or reviewed administratively by staff.
Is that, so in terms of landmarks in the village, we don't have that many landmark properties in the village. So the commission being involved would be, at this point, extremely limited to the few properties that are involved in that, like now, if they're like we just did in Ann Greeno's house. Is that a change where, I mean, it sounds like you're still doing the same thing that you're doing in terms of reviewing any exterior changes or anything like that. That's not taking anything away from what the Landmark Commission does now, right? You guys already do that anyways.
Well, it wouldn't be taking anything away from the Landmark Preservation Commission right now because they wouldn't review these houses unless they were also designated a landmark. And if they are also designated a landmark, then they would need to go before the Landmark Preservation.
And then the last question is, they were using the words of architecturally significant versus landmark status. Which, you know, they're 2 different things. Architecturally significant means an HAIS might be ordered. Landmark status is a different thing. You're talking about landmark, not versus architecturally significant by the commission, right?
This process, if a property owner went through this process, it's separate from the landmark designation process. The property would not need to be designated a landmark to receive the 20% density bonus.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Can I go?
Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, Rob, I was muted.
Oh, okay. I sent Peter a note prior, and I think most of the questions were answered. I received several different letters, really well thought out letters about this 20%, and I think we're fine the way it's written. It is, I think the terminology, if I can get my glasses on, it's basically the FAR bonus provision will not excuse all their applicable zoning provisions that may independently require zoning relief in order to utilize the bonus. So it's up to 20%. And if it doesn't encroach on neighbors and other things that we would obviously always take a look at. So it's not an automatic, which it shouldn't be, but I think it's a nice carrot to have for sure. So I like the way that was written, the way it's structured, that obviously this just isn't an automatic thing, but it's out there. The other thing I will talk very briefly about, which I'm not going to ask for an answer tonight, but I just want to throw it on the board, which is the house next to me, which was on the front page of all these papers, the 740 Ardsley property that was roaring towards demolition has been stopped. The owners have sold the property. It has, I've been working with them behind the scenes. We found another buyer. It is closed. It will be saved and renovated by another Winnetka family with 5 kids. So I give the former owners a tremendous credit for having, realizing what this meant to the village, because they want to develop another property here, but they don't want didn't quite realize they came from outside of Winnetka what they were getting into and how important this was. And I give the new family a tremendous credit for stepping up and buying this home. So to be saved. One thing he did say to me, the first call he said to me after he bought it, he goes, "Dear Lord, you know what it's going to cost me for permits to renovate this house?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And we have I think kind of if we want a real carrot that's immediate for anybody that's trying to preserve a home, we have a per thousand cost on renovation. And we have a per square foot cost on demolition. And it costs a lot more to renovate than to demolish a house. And I think we have to take a look at this very quickly and potentially constructively figure out a way to make this a carrot to not penalize people who are trying to do the right thing. So,
Trustee Avatop, I would say it really depends upon the house.
Yep.
And because it isn't always more expensive to renovate, depending upon the scale and the amount of renovation. This one's a pretty significant one.
Yeah.
And when you add it all up, there is a difference. But it's something that we'd want to take a thorough review. Aligned with our overall fee structures, which I have somewhat targeted for our budget process this coming year.
Yeah, and there may be ways that other villages around us have raised their per square foot footage on the demolition to cover some of the renovation benefits that they're going to get, and a lot of other villages are much higher up, much higher cost on demolition. So I agree, Rob. It should be a very thoughtful review, but I think it can be pretty clear. But on these significant homes that are going to have that you want saved, they're expensive to renovate. And this was kind of this statute was put in, I think, a long time ago and has not really been looked at. And it's punitive in this case for sure, like 3 times the cost.
Yeah, I know the demolition fee hasn't changed since I've been here.
Right.
So it's probably time to at least look at the escalation of inflation, benchmark it to other communities, get a sense of whether our system still makes sense or not.
Yeah.
My sense is it does. It depends upon how you want to incent.
Yeah.
And understanding what the offsets are and what the benefits are for the community.
Totally agree. I think it's a good carrot to look at for sure for the renovators.
Hey, Rob. Bayhan?
Yes.
When you're doing that analysis of other communities, be sure that you dig deep enough to find all of the impact fees that get loaded in, because some communities artificially have very, very low building permit fees, only to find out that they're just itemizing everything and loading them in on various impact fees.
I think our neighbor to the north is somewhat like that.
There's a few communities up north that have some pretty significant fees like that. So anyway, it's just important that you include all of it so we have a good understanding of what kind of checks developers and homeowners are writing to do these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
John.
Yeah, I lost connection for a few minutes, so sorry about that. I got some basic questions. One of the things that came up in the study session I asked for was more detail on the 20% bonus and how that affects FAR, roof coverage, building setbacks, things like that. What was given to us today, it's easy to put a number on 20% of FAR, but a lot of the FAR, you may not be able to build a house that big if the roof area is too big. So I think we need more detail to really see what the FAR 20% bonus effect is on a full bulk requirement of a site. I'd like to see that, as I asked for last time. And then reading the ordinances, it seems like there's inconsistency between what they call FAR bonus, unless it's just the way I'm reading it. There's wording of density bonus, GFA bonus. It's not all consistently used as one FAR bonus. So maybe that's something I'm missing. I'm not sure if it's David or maybe Peter can answer that. What do you think?
It's GFA. I mean, if there's language issues, we'll go back and spec it out, but we use the provision that's in the zoning code now. So it's not a density bonus, is a shorthanded version of it, but it's you know.
Is it GFA or FAR? If you want pages, I can maybe.
No, it's
yeah, like
it's building size bonus.
That's on page 145, and then like the same paragraph, the one paragraph down, it says GFA bonus.
Right.
Further on, historic density bonus. So it's really a lot of different languages being interchanged that could really be confusing. I think it should be cleaned up if this moves forward. Unless I'm totally missing something.
No, we'll check. We'll make it consistent.
Okay, great, good. And I know as I was reading through it, is like, the way it's written is that the Landmark Commission determines if the house is historic. And that's what gets the process moving. With this bonus issue, one concern I might have is that you may find an owner of a property that wants his house to have the 20% bonus, and he's going to find an expert historic architect to make a story for this property, to make his house historic, to get the 20% bonus. But it seems like the way it's written right now, the only way to get that is that the Landmark Commission has to designate it. And I could see a fight there between a historic architect owner / the Landmark Commission not wanting it. I can't, you know, that can happen. I just make sure that's clarified somehow. What do you think on that, Peter?
I think it's possible, but somebody's got to make the decision on behalf of the village as to whether it's architecturally or historically significant. So it is possible that somebody could be trying to say it's historic and the Landmark Commission may disagree.
The same fight we have now, just going the other way.
Right. And then how does that get resolved? Is there a resolution process going to council, right?
There's usually the Landmark Preservation Commission orders an HAIS, a historic study, and the developer or whoever is looking to tear down the house hires an expert to come in. And the number of experts that are usually hired, there's a small pool of them that are usually hired. And so you don't see a lot of, usually the developer or the builder will go to the Historic Society and ask them for a recommendation. And I think the village also refers them that way. So
that's in the current scenario.
But again, the commissioners, myself excluded, but the commissioners are experts in the area of preservation and land. So they're not likely to, they're like an expert jury. So if somebody were to come in with a claim that, hey, my house is historic, Ray Kroc visited it once in the 1960s, the commission would understand and know whether or not they have the depth of knowledge on the commission is unbelievable in terms of.
But you could be going up against a depth of knowledge of a historic architect that's fighting against, because it's an opposite scenario to get the 20% bonus.
But what I'm saying is I don't think there's a big risk that the commission will get snowed by phony science or bad history or bad architecture. The knowledge of the commissioners is high, and the area of knowledge is limited in the sense that somebody is not going to walk in with information about an architect or a piece of property or a school of architecture that is unknown to the commission, where they're going to go, oh, I didn't know that, I'm going to go with you. These are the people you want making these decisions, because they really do understand the difference between a good house and a bad house. They don't, when a house is put up for a historic study, they don't pick just anything, or, a junky, crappy house. They really do go through it, and the decisions are made, and they're pretty good.
I think whatever ordinance we come up with, we cannot always count on having the high quality of commissioners that we have today. I mean, we have great people have served, but we've also seen at times here in the village where people end up in positions and a lot of other folks scratch their head and say, how the hell did they get there? Sometimes, I mean,
I know people look at me and think that, how did he get there?
Well, I mean,
but if it proceeds to the point where there's the case I'm trying to raise, it's going to be to fight against, I've got my house, I have an architect, I got 3 historic licensed architects that do historic architecture across the US, but yet the Winnetka Landmark Commission doesn't agree. Yeah, show me your licenses and show me your historic stuff.
I think it's a pretty the competence of the commission forever at all times. And so we have to be careful of that to make sure that there's something that doesn't strictly rely on the competence of the people filling the position at any given point in time. Like 2053 or something, I mean, it's got something.
John, I think that there's not a huge risk of that happening. And I think that, Peter could address procedurally and legally what happens in that circumstance. I think it's within the realm of, we know what will happen.
That's fine. Go back to my other question.
You guys are drifting off into deliberation again, and I really wanted to.
All right. So another question back to David. Sorry, about more detail on the effects of the bulk regulations versus the 20% bonus. Have you looked at that at all?
It's really going to be on a case-by-case basis in terms of what structure is there. In terms of what sort of setbacks they have now, what sort of impermeable lot coverage they have. It's going to be hard to come up with each situation, even with the bonus. To say whether or not the bonus is going to be an incentive enough is really going to depend upon if the site has much excess GFA capacity.
Right, so I think what I'd like to see, if you took page 184, 735 Sheridan Road, that you used as the 20% example for a large lot, versus 799 Foxdale, which is a small lot. Based on those two lots, you should be able to come up with a pretty close, do the bulk report. Giving someone a 20% bonus for 27,000 square foot house, because of roof area and impervious, that might not even work. I'm not sure.
John, we wouldn't have necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but we don't have roof area and impermeable surface on file for like all these houses.
No, but I think you have to take a guess on one of these houses. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, I don't think
you're giving someone a 20% bonus to build 27,000 square feet.
Yeah,
it may not even be possible.
I get what you're saying, John. I'm just saying you're asking questions I don't think our team could ever answer without spending crazy time
and
people's property and taking a measurement. That's stuff that is submitted in zoning. We would see people go and measure.
But here we are modifying a pretty major ordinance or rule.
I understand what we're doing
without having a clue.
John, I don't want to debate it right now. We're just asking questions. We need to get to the audience comments.
So that's a question I'd like to resolve. You know where I stand on that. That's okay. All right. Okay, the other questions that can wait till later, not questions. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Bob.
Sorry. I actually, and John, thanks for raising some issues that can maybe be cleaned up legally and so on. I actually thought the ordinance and amendments and edits and so on, Peter, I thought you and Ben did a great job, for something that was pretty complicated. And Andy, I give you credit on the 20% FAR. I thought it, I feel like I understand it now with John I don't understand it, but I felt I understood it. So Peter, just a couple of legalese questions. In section 4, where you started talking about sort of the demolition process and what qualified, you use the word destroy. And I just want to make sure the word destroy in all of this is just it's a placement word, and that what defines destroy is defined as you go along, because destroy is a pretty heavy word. If you talk about destroying the architectural significance and so on, I mean, it's pretty extreme, but then you kind of define it. So I just, I would have used words like, compromise or unduly diminish or whatever, but the word destroy is in there throughout. And I just want to get your interpretation of that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a word used often when you're talking about historically significant aspects, like you destroy the historic significance. So you could destroy the historic significance of a structure without destroying the structure. So it is a little bit of a term of art. If there's concern over it, we certainly can, define it in a way. But that is, somebody could have a historically significant structure and they paint the blinds or the shutters, polka dots. They may be destroying the architectural significance of the building. They're not actually physically doing anything to the structure. So that's kind of the concept of that word in that context.
Okay, I'm kind of thinking of it maybe the opposite way, that, someone could change the architectural significance of a property, but not to the point where they, quote, destroy it, but it sort of changes it. And I think I think it actually dovetails into the definition of what destroy would mean as you go through it. And then it gets a little less extreme. That's how I read it.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is, I think each time we talk about that, we use this, and I'm looking this way because I'm looking at it, we use the standards that are in the section of the code talking about exterior renovations and additions. So when we say that for the exterior renovations, if the director determines in accordance with those standards that the renovations do not destroy the building. So I think each time we do it, we are tying it to standards, as David said in his presentation. So we should make sure we're doing that, because I don't think the LPC or the director wants no standards on these decisions.
Correct. So if you could just
look
at that word destroy. And on the standards, that was one of the things that, and I think it was very clear in the memo and so on, that there was some concern about this, going back to the director for interpretation and so on and so forth. It would seem to me that in my experience with LPC and so on, is that the HAIS studies in terms of demolition and so on they're very thorough. But I wonder if in those studies, and maybe Jack or some of the other attendees on this call can comment on this, but I wonder in those studies, if they could delineate, we could ask them to delineate very clearly what the key architectural components or significance of the properties would be. And so that it would give the director definite, direction on, hey, these are the things that can't be altered too significantly or whatever. They touch on them in the HAIS studies. They're very comprehensive, but I kind of fear a little bit not having clear direction to that department and ultimately to the council, if it came to the council, that here are the key components that needed to be addressed. They need to be preserved. And I wonder if that can be part of the HIS study.
Some of the other commissioners who are attendees may be able to comment to that, and Louise may have an idea on that. I don't know well enough to answer that question.
I apologize. I was running around trying to find a power cord. Bob, are you done?
I don't know if it was answered, Penny, but I think that just this sort of vague dropping it in the director lap, I think the director, it sounds like they're a little concerned about that. And so I think what comes out of the LPC through the HIS study could be very clear, give a good roadmap to the director on what to be looking for.
To answer your question, the answer is yes, we could add something to the HIS requirement to get at the point.
Okay.
That can
I think it'd be helpful.
The question that I had kind of piggybacks on Bob. And again, I would actually be interested to hear feedback from the commissioners, because since I haven't been on the LPC and I'm not exactly sure how it works, but wondering if the expertise of the commission would be helpful in terms of reviewing, as Bob was talking about, the elements of the house that make it significant. I mean, even if it's not a landmark house, just because they do have, there is professional expertise or, experience that may be helpful, but I don't know, since I've never been on the Landmarks Commission, I don't know whether that's a good point or not necessary. So I would be interested in hearing input on that.
I'm glad Rob and Penny brought that up. I was going to go there, but it wasn't a question, so I was going to wait till later. One of the concerns I have is that now you're really giving bonuses, going back to the historic nature of the home, and you're putting that design emphasis back to the department head.
Yeah.
I think you now need to create a design review board or back to the LPC to review that house to make sure that you keep the historical significance.
Yeah, John, these HIS studies, if you read them, they are so comprehensive that there's very little room for interpretation on these things.
Okay. And then one step further, I think the ordinance refers to the front of the house only.
Okay, guys.
And if you got,
I would really like to save our deliberations from
after again, I will wait. I was going to wait, but it came up.
Annie, do you have any other questions to ask?
No, that was my main question. Relative to questions, I mean, there are things I want to talk about, but I was just interested.
We'll talk about stuff afterwards. I want to get.
Yeah. I just wanted to hear feedback. I wanted to ask the question so that I could get input from the commissioners and people who are out in the audience.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Kristen, it's my favorite time of night.
President Rentz, we have written comments submitted in advance and people in the audience. Which would you prefer to address first?
Oh, why don't you surprise me?
Okay, I would like to do the written comments first. Our first comment is from Mara Foster. I support strengthening the village's ordinance on obtaining demolition permits for architecturally significant historic homes. Thank you. The second comment is from Justine Horihani. Hello, I support measures to protect this town's architectural charm and character. I support 1, an increase in demolition delay to 270 days for historically or architecturally significant homes. 2, 20% gross floor area bonus for historically or architecturally significant homes. 3, architectural guidelines for new construction. And 4, discounted permits for renovating historic homes. Thank you. The next comment is from Liza and Eric Gravengard. We support strengthening the village's ordinance on obtaining demolition permits for architecturally significant historic homes. The next comment from Elizabeth Stucker. Please note, I strongly support strengthening the village's ordinance on obtaining demolition permits for architecturally significant historic homes. Please take this into consideration as you vote tomorrow night. The next comment is from Amy Capochi. Dear Village Council, I'm writing to you to express my steadfast support of strengthening the village's ordinance on obtaining demolition permits for architecturally significant historic homes. As the owner of an 1897 Winnetka home, I know the investment of time, energy, and money that goes into caring for such properties. Despite this, I feel strongly that Winnetka's historic homes are an irreplaceable and significant part of what creates the great appeal of our neighborhoods and village. The next comment is from Alex Ross. Dear members of the council, along with our wonderful lake, one of the most charming things about Winnetka is its inventory of historic homes. Growing up here as a child, nothing pleased me more than looking at each of the homes in Winnetka as I rode by them on a bike or in my car. Today, I still thrill at riding my bike around with my children, pointing out and remarking on the different kinds of homes from years past. While updating the inventory is essential over time to appeal to newer generations and their needs, a town of similar homes with little to no historic value would do us all a disservice, both in terms of the aesthetic and the significance. We have 100-year-old oaks and preserve them with wonderful policies. Can we not do the same for our 100-year-old homes? Please vote to strengthen our ordinances on this manner. And finally, from Bethany Crocker, Dear Village Council, thank you for holding tonight's meeting to review Winnetka's historic preservation codes. We reside in and have extensively renovated a historic home at 559 Oak Street. For the benefit of our village and its history, my husband Van and I wholeheartedly support strengthening the village's ordinance on obtaining demolition permits for architecturally significant historic homes. Thank you for considering this very important matter to our village. That concludes the comments submitted in advance. At this time, we have attendees in the audience. If you would like to speak to the council and make a public comment, please use the Zoom platform to raise your hand.
Kristen?
Yes.
Would it be possible, I noticed last week that when you promote somebody to join us so we can see them. Are you guys still there?
It is possible to do that. That hasn't been our past practice.
Well, I think it's weird to have our neighbors out there in the dark and we can't even see them when they're talking to us. But I noticed that once a couple people are up, that you can't get them off, their names off the screen after that. Is that correct?
Right. So Zoom, it has a little bit different interface than WebEx. So once you promote someone into the room, then they stop sharing their video or don't share it. Their name still appears on the main screen.
All right, well, do whatever you think is best. I would really love to be able to see our guests, but I guess
if you would like to, we certainly can do that, President Rentz.
But you know, we'll end up with 30 tiles on our screen, which just makes it harder for us to do our business later. So I guess we'll just have to go with the voice.
I think we'd have the tiles anyways with the names, even without the videos. So
really?
Yeah, I think so. Because the pictures will disappear when the people sign out, but I think their names will stay.
All right, well, sorry, Kristen.
So President Rentz, at this time, would you like me to ask the audience to raise their hand?
Sure.
So,
and then you can promote them.
Okay. So Louise has raised her hand. Louise, I'm promoting you, and if you'd like to share your video, you may do so.
I will unmute my screen. I have been the chairman of the LPC for the past 15 years. That's 15. Prior to that, I was part of the actual ordinance in 1987 when it was voted on. I believe Clarine Hall was the village manager at that time. So
you went off there, Louise.
Mute. He's muted. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, I can guarantee to John that these HAISs are not as Bob Dearborn mentioned. They are not just something that comes off part of a book. The people that create these HAIs spend many times spend days and weeks studying these buildings, going through the buildings, and coming out with very, very complete historic architectural impact studies. One thing that I noticed is that in the body of the ordinance, and since I only received the actual notice of tonight's meeting and the ordinance, oh, that won't work. The first sentence of the 270 days, there's no mention of, it just says that the application to the village has to be complete. I think there should be a mention in there about the fact that the HAIS study has been considered by the LPC as complete, because that would show that there is something more than just, well, you know, it's complete, the application is into the village, they should get the 270 days. The HAIS is very important to the quality of these homes that are being considered. And I think it should be that, you know, I can't find that first paragraph, but it's the paragraph that identifies the 270 day. And actually, I was, since I think there were times that we granted go ahead with your demolition to different houses. The HAIS had to be submitted and complete. However, there were also, that was under the 60-day delay. Under the 270-day delay, again, reiterating what I said before, there's no mention of the HAIS. And I think that gives the village, I wouldn't call it cover, but I would say that it gives the village the ability to show that this house has been very carefully studied by the LPC and by experts in the state of Illinois, and it's considered a house of architectural or historic value. In the long run, and I say this all the time, there is no home in Winnetka that can be preserved except for three structures: 151 Sheridan, the Crow Island School, and the Lloyd House on Sheridan Road. You have to be not a village landmark. You have to be a national landmark. Even though you may be on the list of national landmarks, that doesn't mean anything. National landmarks are structures like Mount Vernon. So actually, no matter how many times you think you're preserving your home, all you can do is look at these ordinances and continue with them. But you can't keep a home forever unless it also has to be in the deed of the property that this home can never be demolished. So I think, you know, that's not something you want to tell the villagers. It's not necessary. I've waited a long time for this meeting, and I was glad to see that it was finally this afternoon. I think the ordinance has never, ever, since 1987, been changed. It fought for its life in 1993, 94. It was quite a battle that it went on during the early and middle 90s for historic preservation. So I'm glad to see that you're giving attention to this ordinance. It certainly needs to be looked at. It should be increased to give what the residents of the village want. They just spoke to you. They want protection, for a little bit more protection than what is in the ordinance now. Thank you. Thank you for finally granting this meeting.
Thanks, Louise.
Thank you, Louise.
How you feeling, by the way?
Well, and hopefully nobody ever has a heart problem, but if you do, go to the Cleveland Clinic. It's an amazing place. It's amazing. And I spent 2 weeks there and came home, and I'm recuperating. I'm not 100%, but it's getting better every day. That's an amazing place for the care of the heart. It really is.
You sound great, Louise. So welcome back. We're glad to have you back in the conversation.
Let us know if you need some chicken soup, Louise. We'll bring it over.
Yep. All right, next, Kristen, please.
Are there any other members of the audience that would like to raise their hand and comment on this matter? Okay, Beth Ann.
Good job.
I just wanted to thank you for, for bringing this to discussion. We have heard from so many neighbors for so long, can't we do something to our ordinance to, better protect these historic homes and architecturally significant properties? But I just wanted to confirm how much I agree with Louise's point that, there should be a complete HAIS. And I think that would give, just validity to all that we've been saying, what determines, a home historic or architecturally significant. And I just wanted to mention that, members of the Landmark Preservation Council, we take our direction from the Winnetka Historical Society, as well as like Landmarks Illinois. I mean, we do take this very seriously. We don't just give, we require an HAIS of every demolition permit or demolition application of a home that comes before us. I mean, there's room and there's plenty of opportunity in our community for new construction and preservation as well. But I thank you for really considering this now, and we hope to implement measures to protect architecturally significant and historic homes. But I think that the delay should definitely begin upon the determination of the completion of the HAIS. So thank you.
Thank you.
And also, may I add one more thing? Bob, we've also heard from other neighbors, including Justine Hurricane, as she mentioned before. That is another excellent idea to decrease the permit costs for renovating an architecturally significant home, and maybe also consider expediting the process to do that. Yep. Just increase the incentive to preserve instead of demolish one of these special properties. So thank you.
Thanks, Beth Ann.
Thanks, Beth.
Kristen, next.
Are there any other members of the audience who would like to speak at this time? I don't see any hands raised, President Rentz.
Okay, well then we'll thank you for your comments, and we'll bring it back to council. Now you guys can have at it. And before we go there, Peter, some things that I think that are pretty important is this whole concept. You know, Louise mentioned it as it provides us with some sort of cover, I guess you could call it, having a good record in case you have somebody who really might not want to comply, I guess is the way to put it. So that let's make sure that we do have good files, good paper, and good reasoning behind issuing this 270-day or whatever it is delay, if that's where we're going.
Chris, can I make a point on that one?
Yes.
So David, check me on this, but the way we drafted this is you only get the 270-day delay only kicks in after there's been an HIS and after the LPC has made the historic determination.
Okay.
Which is the exact process today. All that we've done is say, if they make that same determination, the delay is longer.
Okay. So you already have the provisions in there and the building of the file and all the other stuff. None of that changes, correct?
Correct. Okay, go ahead, David.
Yeah, Peter, I think what's changed is it's gone from the 270 days starts with the complete application versus the 60 days starting from the complete HAIS and then a vote by the Landmark Preservation Commission. So I think what the commission members and Louise were talking about is taking the 270 days, separating it from the application and moving it to the determination of historic or architectural significance like it is now.
Right, but the direction we got from the council was that the 270 days was from the date of application.
Yeah, right. I think the attendees are making the argument to change it to the end.
They want more.
Yep.
Well, actually, I think there are 2 points there. One is what Louise was making was that on addenda packet, page 152, section A1, that the sentence would read a period up to 270 days, also in terms of what Jack said. Then there would be a comma, which would be determined. I mean, that would be, because right now it sounds like they're automatically given it.
No, Penny, the way it works is that,
I know what you're saying, but I'm just saying the structure of the sentence is confusing because it doesn't sound like it means what we mean it to mean. Because I know that you wouldn't grant the 270 days until the determination is made, but and that that date would be retro. It would go back to the application date, but it doesn't sound like that. So we need to clean that up a little bit. So I understand the point that Louise was making on that one. So we need guide. I don't know. We can take a look at that, but that does need to be fixed right there. And then the question is, remind me, what was the amount of time that it typically takes from the time somebody applies for demolition permit to having the Landmark Preservation Commission make a decision after the HAIS? How long typically does that take? I can't remember what we said.
It typically will occur in 90 days, will be the meeting at which the LPC would be reviewing an HAIS to determine whether or not the property is historic or architecturally significant.
Okay.
It could take longer, depending upon how quickly an applicant today is able to get an HAIS completed, but generally after the initial review by the LPC, it'll come 2 months later, the HAIS. So they submit an application in 30 days, it gets on an agenda.
Okay.
They review the preliminary materials, they determine they need an HAIS, then it generally takes 2 months to get the HAIS back on the agenda because they need to get it prepared. We have notice requirements we need to meet. Then if at the end of that HAIS review, they issue the 60-day delay, then it's about 150 days before they get their demolition permit. It could take longer if the commission finds the HAIS is incomplete or something else happens.
Hey, David, I have a memory.
Thank you.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I recall sometimes applicants actually would come in with an HAIS prepared even when it wasn't required. They just had it done. Is that something an applicant could do if they wanted, if they were so worried?
It could go faster. So typically we would still hold the preliminary review, but they may anticipate that they're going to need an HAIS. So they may submit it then the next day.
Okay.
And then it could be the next month that it would be on the agenda. So it could move quicker.
So, but if the applicant wanted to, they could go ahead, have an HAIS prepared even before they're directed to do it. So if we change this deadline to measure from that, it's maybe not the craziest thing because the applicant still has some control over that.
Yes.
It may move the process along.
Which is
yeah.
kind of what we want, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
David, is there are there, and I can't remember this, are there standards for the people who prepare the HAIS? And this gets at John's question of, can they hire anybody? Could they, hire my cousin Vinny?
No, the code does have requirements that it has to be someone, and I can find the code section for you. It has to be someone with expertise.
Okay. So there's a standard in the code. Okay.
Yeah, and I also think, Jack, that the one of the actions that your commission takes is to accept the HAIS, right? So, I mean, even if they turn in something from an unknown self-proclaimed specialist and it's just generally insufficient, you can declare it such and send them back for more information.
With a provision in the code saying that the person would have to meet certain standards, then I'd feel more comfortable in doing that, because then you wouldn't be, it wouldn't seem unfair if we were to say, Vinny Coladarchi, he shouldn't be doing reports.
Got it.
I haven't got a cousin Vinny either, but there is a guy doing reports.
If you did.
If I did, he'd be doing historic reports.
So what I'm hearing from Louise and other people that sent in emails and talked today is that their support to strengthen our process. And it seems like all we're doing at this point, we're not strengthening the preservation of the homes architecturally. We're basically we're strengthening the 270 days to make it harder for someone to tear the house down. I think what we're doing now is just a knee jerk. Let's make it 270, delay it as long as we can, and give them a bonus. To properly do it and really preserve, I think we have to look at the design of the future house. I think the ordinance says front of the house. It could be a corner lot. What about the side? Or the neighbor might see the other back of the house, yet the guy just destroyed some terrible addition on the back of a historic house. It should be an all-encompass review of what's being done,
right,
and not left up to the staff, not anything against you, David, at all, to decide 5 or 10 years or 20 years from now that the addition can be done or the work can be done in the house. And one thing we're missing maybe in the ordinance, if we give them the 20% bonus, they do their addition, they renovate the home, it looks architecturally significant, it's kept that way. 10 years from now, someone else buys it and changes the front of the house. What's the lock-in feature to always have to continue through this historic ordinance process? I think we're knee-jerking this thing. There's a lot of more thought that can really go into this.
That's the comprehensive plan.
That's a plan.
Right, but there's a provision, John, already here that somebody who has utilized the 20%, if they come back for a building permit to make renovations, they have to go through a review to make sure they're not destroying this historical.
Right. And that goes back to what I think should be a review board of some type, whether it's a design review board or someone, because, you know, David's here today. Tomorrow could be someone else. Next year, it could be an outsourced person. Who knows? Well, I think there's got to be teeth in it.
Yeah, I think it's not perfect, guys, but I do think this is clearly the step in the right direction that needs to happen. You've heard from the people tonight. Louise has dedicated decades to this. Chris has been involved. I mean, this has been. I think we're not going to get it perfect, but we need to move. We need to get this going.
Well, it's been around for a long time, like Louise noted, and I'd hate to knee-jerk it, change it today, knowing that we can do better if we take more time on it and do it properly and make it a process.
But the point of this ordinance revision is to get us to the comprehensive plan, which is why we have the end discussion about, do we sunset it or do we just use a whereas clause as a reminder? I think, John, your fears are answered by the comprehensive plan, which will go into the issues of whether or not there should be a design review board that handles incoming architecture. I think a design review board would be a much more significant change than this. And I don't think we should link this at all to that right now.
Right, so let's pretend
this is to get us to the comprehensive plan. It's not really knee-jerk. I mean, I would say that this has been bubbling along since 1987.
Right.
So this is to get us to the comprehensive plan. So I don't think it's an immediate knee-jerk thing.
Yeah. So let's say the comprehensive plan is 2 years away. We've made it this long. And,
right, and we're losing houses at a rapid rate.
Yeah,
I don't know if they call it rapid.
It's pretty fast.
And it's going to get worse with the people coming up right now. I've seen it next to me. There's another 20 behind that. So I think this is a great step, as I think we have heard. It's long overdue, and I think we need to move forward and get it done.
Peter, can I ask a question? John keeps referring. I'm not digging into the document right now, but keeps referring to just the front exterior of the property. I mean, to address that, I mean, it shouldn't just be the front exterior. It should be the entire property. If the property has architectural significance and they want to rip the back off that's architecturally significant, that shouldn't be allowed. I mean, is he correct that this is just about the front?
I'm looking for that right now.
No, he's correct. That came from a comment from the study session. There was comment that, if somebody had a historic building or historic home and they were doing something on the back that wasn't visible from anybody's property, that we only wanted to focus on the visible. So it's a policy decision, but it is referred to in here. That was based on a comment from the study session. We can definitely broaden it if that's the consensus of the council.
Peter, could we do it so that we keep the front, but getting back to Bob's idea, which I liked, of having the Landmark Commission identify like the features that need to be preserved. If there's something, unique or historic that needs to be preserved in the back, the side, or whatever, like what I'm wondering is, could we basically, keep it so it covers the front, and in addition, any other architectural elements, even if not on the front, identified as architecturally significant, identified by the Landmark Preservation Committee. I think that might be the way to deal with that, because I think, I do remember the comment, maybe it was me, but a lot of times, I mean, usually we're dealing with additions off the back. Usually the back doesn't, I mean, we had that very specific example where that's exactly what they were doing. They're building off the back, and that's where you have room to do it. So, but I do agree that there could be situations where that would be a disaster. So if we tie it to that idea Bob had, I think it works.
On page one, the agenda packet 155, where it talks about the criteria and the general standards, it says what C and D, which are the distinguishing really original qualities and the distinctive stylistic features. I think, you know, working off of those criteria that would be identified in the HAIS, that seems to me that would tie it all together. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Penny. That's perfect.
So is that removing the word front from wherever that was?
Now that would stay. You're always protecting the front, but if there's additional
features or elements, yeah.
I mean, it's like the house that we approved a couple of weeks ago, where it was historic. They put the addition on the side also. Yep. And my point was the detail should follow the addition as much as possible. We have no meat to put that in right now. But if you look at a historic house that might be in the plans right now, you walk around on a historic house or historically architecturally significant, the front of the house, all four sides have architecture. So to not maintain that architecture on four sides going forward with a 20% bonus, I think it should be critical that you're going to match the architecture of the home, all four sides again.
That's a design review thing.
You might have three neighbors that don't like looking at a glass addition out the back with a flat roof on a beautiful home.
Yeah, and that's a whole different issue that I think we all agree we want to talk about, but that's just not where we are.
Well, I think
I know where you want to, but I think the rest of us are sort of like, let's do this now. And I think we'll eventually catch up to you, and maybe you'll say, no, you guys were all wrong. Look at the disaster that unfolded in that 6 months. But I think we're all willing to take that risk.
John, we're not making the determinations that are being suggested aren't turning these houses into Frank Lloyd Wright houses, where you can't change anything. Right. The plumbing has to stay the same. The cracking concrete has to stay the same. That's not what it is. And again, I think there is a fear that you'll end up with just a facade on the front of a house and the rest of it will be like you're talking about. But again, the number of houses that are going to be influenced or subjected to this is not a huge number within those houses in the village. You know, the culling has taken place already of most houses. Now I think we're not at a risk of having every single house in the village subject to the dictates of the Landmark Preservation Commission.
Right, and that's where, you know, my past comments were, it'd be great to have that list. These are the homes, but we don't have that.
But
list.
that's not.
And even some of the emails today, even some of the email comments said, I wrote down the inventory of homes is great, and we're increasing the inventory of our homes in Winnetka. We don't have an inventory. Those comments were made in the emails.
Well, it's a question of what does inventory mean? Inventory literally means the number of homes that we have. I mean, so, you know, but the question is of significant homes, but the HAISs are pretty in depth. And I mean, you have to get a lot of information and spend a lot of time and I don't think that we as a village can spend that time and money to do that on all the houses in the village. I
don't think it's necessary because the issue doesn't come up until somebody submits a demolition permit. So we wouldn't really need to inventory our historic houses unless we were going to go about creating a historic preservation district and we were trying to get some sense of what the size of the district was going to be or the number of houses that are affected, but we're not trying to do that. I mean, this is just saying when you make the decision to demolish a house, and the house is potentially historic, then you have to follow these procedures. I don't think we need to inventory the entire house to figure out.
No, I'm just referring to some of the.
One thing I think we've got to be intellectually honest about is not discounting how many houses we're talking about. You know, I've heard a lot of references. We have to be intellectually straight with everybody as we're having this conversation. Look, you know, I heard several times somebody say, well, it's only 6 or 8 or 10, or, you know, there's only a handful of houses, right? But Jack, I mean, you've seen 5 or 6 in the past 5 months during COVID. I mean, so.
Which is why we're here today.
Up here, right? Well, of course, but something's not adding up. And it does sound like it's quite a few more than 5 or 6 homes. I think there's quite a few homes in play right now, and you know, we've got to be cognizant of that too.
I think, Chris, it was 6 or 7% over the last 5 years or so.
Right.
So it was.
But look what's happening. Look what's happened in the last 6 months, Bob.
No, that's correct, and that is why we're sort of talking right now.
But I think we've got to be straight about the fact that we're probably talking, you know, not about 5 or 10, but probably more like 100.
Oh, but in terms of the percentage,
yeah, I mean, sure. Out of 4,000 houses or whatever our total house number is, maybe, yeah, sure.
If you have
in theory, every 20 years, the number is going to grow by a few more homes.
Well, don't worry. At the rate we're going, there's not going to be anything left to protect. It'll all be gone.
Again, I'm just trying to
keep
conversation factual, and it sounds like there's a lot more than 5 or 6 homes out there.
I think 100. Maybe that's a good guess in terms of the number of total houses in the village. It might be subject to this. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's telling me. Go ahead, Penny.
I think a couple questions, and I didn't hear back from the commissioners, from Beth Ann or Louise, relative to whether having review of the construction plans by the Landmark Commission would be of help or not. It sounds like, you know, I don't know whether there would be any judgment calls involved. You know, whether it would be as straightforward as reviewing a.
No, I don't think that's part of today's conversation for sure, Penny. You know, we have so much relative to when we start talking design review, which is something I wanted to talk about. I mean, you know, you're opening up a whole nother can of worms here.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking because the question that I have is relative to the checklist of what would be permissible in terms of the design, the construction plans or whatever. I
mean, for the FAR?
Right. Okay. Right. And so the question is the review of that proposal, will it be an obvious checklist, or, you know, does it need to go back to the LPC?
I think staff makes that review, right, David? Wouldn't you guys make the decision if the proposed modifications are within the correct parameters? I can use more cliches.
Is that, I mean,
under the proposed ordinance, you're correct.
And will it be that obvious? Again, I'm asking out of total ignorance because I have absolutely no idea. So it'll be obvious whether they're conforming or not.
There will be some gray areas in terms of discussion of compliance. I mean, it's part of historic preservation and preserving, and some things will be much more black and white.
Okay, and so that's totally within staff purview, and that's okay, or
that's a policy decision for the council.
Yeah, quite honestly, Penny, I think that and maybe Peter, you can clear this up once and for all, but I think that some of the discussion here is talking about tightening this whole thing up a little bit, so there's less ambiguity to staff in terms of, you know, this decision making, whether it's through the HIAS or whether it's through, you know, subsection C and D on page 155 or whatever. I mean, Peter, you have the ability here to tighten this up a little bit, so it's, you know, kind of clear, you know, what the staff is looking to ultimately accomplish.
Right, because I don't want staff to get stuck in having to make sort of policy decisions.
Right. But Peter, can you do that in this? Can you make these adjustments?
Yeah, I mean, I agree exactly with what David Schoen just said. I mean, what we've done is we've tied the director's evaluation to to standards. So it's not just whether the director thinks it, the director has to look at those standards that are laid out. And that's basically the standards of determining, you know, that were used to determine the architectural significance in the first place. But as David said, you know, every once in a while there is, you know, does this destroy this element? Does this meet this standard?
Right.
A lot of, you know, hopefully most of the time it's, you know, pretty clear, but, you know, I agree with what David said. There's going to be times where the director is going to have to make a close call. Now, maybe the fact that what we've written is if the director denies it, it gets appealed to the council if the property owner disagrees. So that we felt like if it's a close call, that gives the director the ability to deny it and to, you know, let it be an appeal to the council when the council can make the decision.
Yeah, a very basic example could be that everybody might understand. When I was on the design review board, someone would come to us to replace windows above the storefronts on apartments on a building in Winnetka. The old windows were true divided lights. They want to come back in, they want to put glass with just the mutton bars in the glass. You have a historically, architecturally significant home that's got true divided lights. They want to do an addition on the side. Economically or for some reason, they don't want to use the true divided lights. Well, they're going to go to Davis, and Davis, I'm not sure what he's going to say, but he's got to make a decision. Do you do that or not? It could be that small of a detail.
Right.
And now we're putting all this stuff back on David, who's got other things to do also. You know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I don't think it gets that granular. I mean, again, I think when you read these studies, John, you get the sense of what bears on the architectural significance. And if those
true divided light probably comes up
in that report, David's probably going to say those
replace
the windows. It's Jack, help me out on this, but I think when you see those studies and if they delineate it even more clearly on what the key aspects of the home really are, I don't think there's that much gray area on these homes. I mean, on 740 Ardsley, if they came around and said, just keep the front of it the way it was and replace the other three sides, the answer should be absolutely not. I mean, it's a holistic home that has the architecture. The whole home has significance. And, you know, then there are other homes like maybe the Oakley home where the back of it's not that important. I mean, I think, yes, there will be some gray moments, but I don't think it's going to be pervasive. And it certainly won't be pervasive over the next couple of years until the comp plan looks at this thing, you know, more deeply.
It can be revised. If it's not working, you can revise it. Right?
I got a question. If we go ahead with this ordinance, is there any language needed in the ordinance to convert these homes into a new comprehensive plan process to follow once this thing sunsets? How does that happen? You know, the 20% bonus, let's say, was provided for a house today, but a year from now, the comprehensive plan changed. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't have a 20% bonus. You know, how do we go backwards on this 1 year of time or 2 years and looking forward? How do we make the transition? Like now we're going back and saying existing homes in the process, we might now say, hey, you follow this new process with the bonus. That's going to happen now in 2 years with someone in the process. Just want to make sure there's language to get
that'll be a council decision at the time. And frankly, I think we should do the whereas provision where it's just,
I think so too.
A year after the comp plan, it's brought up and we review it. Not we'll be all long gone.
The council.
Whoever the council is.
And we can't, for better or for worse, we can't tie the hands of future councils. So that'll be up to them.
Two other questions I have or comments I just have on the text. It talks about a survey of the property. It should probably be a current survey, maybe within 6 months or a year. It's not a survey from 30 years ago that isn't accurate. I see it all the time. And then
seriously,
language on
the
page
surveys the surveys that are a part of what we receive on the LPC are David and Chris Marks gathered. I haven't seen any really old surveys. I think it's all.
Yeah, just maybe you want the language in there. And then it talks about the disclosure and proof of ownership. Should there be provision in there for a contract purchaser? How is that handled?
Peter?
No, we can include that. I mean, if you're a contract purchaser, you can be an applicant with the owner's consent. So it's usually a co-application at that point.
Yeah, something so that we don't just get an applicant that doesn't own the home and now is presenting stuff to us that you may or may not have authority. So,
David, am I right about, is that how you handle those things?
The property owner has to be part of the application.
Right, right.
And in terms of the HAIS, the detail, the HAIS is prepared with the idea of documenting the property fully, with the knowledge that the property is more likely than not going to be torn down. So the person doing the HAIS is very careful in describing all architectural details of it, interior and exterior. And they'll actually go through the history. They'll say the interior has been significantly changed since the property was originally built. And we had one recently where they had gone back and found pictures from the newspapers of the interior hallway of a house from 1927, showing a chandelier and a staircase and some beautiful details versus now. And then you went back and you looked and it was clear that the interior of the house had been scoured of all architecturally significant woodwork and everything else. Somebody had gone in and pulled everything out. So the HAIS is really, I mean, they're fascinating reads. You get an enormous amount of history from them.
Okay, I have an idea. I have a great idea. David, can you pull a recent HAIS from Susan Benjamin and circulate a copy to council? You can do it in a PDF.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Everybody.
I mean, we've read them, but I haven't read them with this in mind. I've read them to learn about the house. Right.
And while you're doing that, Peter, should there be something changed in the ordinance? Maybe. Well, typically, it's the landmark commission that's requesting the HIIS for a significant parcel. Like I presented earlier, what if the owner of the home or contract purchaser is trying to convince the landmark commission that it's a significant property? Is there a different process for that?
Well, that's the second process that David explained, where somebody is not seeking to demolish. They are seeking, they want the determination that they're significant and they want the 20%.
And they want it to be significant, so they get their 20%. It's basically the way the ordinance is written. That's okay then? Or is there any changes?
There's a separate section for that. No, there's a separate section for that.
All right, good.
It would still be an HAIS like we get on a demolition permit as well. So it's going to be the same kind of experts preparing the same kind of report.
Okay.
I think, John, are you worried that there might be too much bias if it's somebody coming in for the 20% FAR?
Yeah, I may find that I'm going to try to really dig deep and get someone with an HAIS certification to say, hey, I want you to go in, I'm going to pay you $20,000. I want you to fight to get my house approved by the Landmark Commission to be architecturally significant, to get my 20%.
I don't think there's, it doesn't work that way in terms of the commissioners examining the report. They would look at the report, and if it was too biased, or if it was too, if it didn't have his, if it wasn't well done and it wasn't, they would say that the report was incomplete and say, wait a minute, what about this? What about this? What about this? They would ask questions and send it back.
Right. So if there is that butting heads and it can't get to a happy applicant, what happens?
Applicant's unhappy.
Well, what's their remedy?
They would either continue to try to submit right now, I'll make a guess and then David and Peter will tell me I'm wrong, but they would have to either submit a report that was acceptable to the commission or they would have to withdraw the application. If they didn't accept the commission's determination, I guess David and Peter would know what they could do at that point. If they said, commission, you're wrong, we reject your finding. We want this to be found a historic and significant house. I don't know if that gets appealed to the council.
And Jack, if I could, so if they lose on the historic thing, and I have no doubt that our LPC will be good arbiters of it. We've entrusted that to them for a long time, so I'm comfortable with it. But let's say, you've got this applicant, they're like, I need my 20%. They try this route, they fail. They can still file for zoning relief.
Agreed.
That I don't, yeah, I was going to ask that question.
The logical thing for them to do would be to do that.
Okay, yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was what...
But we're kind of getting down the rabbit hole on some of this stuff. So I got to reel it back in a little bit. John, I hear what you're saying, though. I mean, there's a lot of potentials and things do need to be tightened up because there's a lot of what.
Lost you, Chris.
Chris, you've gone silent. Chris, you're silent. Hello. Ah! Sign language.
You want sign language?
There you are.
Well, only the stuff
that Too much time on construction sites. I'm sorry. Hold on. Am I back?
You're back.
Oh, oops. Kristen, you got your finger on the button?
You weren't muted, so there was nothing I could do. Although nothing came through, so we're still good.
Okay.
It's a 7-second delay from radio.
We're getting into the weeds. I want to bring this thing back around, though. It sounded like, David, there were 3 things you were kind of trying to get your head wrapped around. You got the 20% figured out pretty much, right?
Can I, if you would mind, President Rentz, there's a few items.
It's getting late.
I understand, but this, just based on what we heard, I just want to make sure that we're
you can get your confirmations now.
Okay. So we'll go back and look at the consistent language regarding the GFA bonus, density bonus that John had. We'll incorporate some language to make it clear that the HAIS should identify those architectural features that should be retained as part of a density bonus, or just, we will, the effectiveness of the ordinance, that we may need a little more direction. So what I was hearing from Trustee Kripe was that he wanted the ability for applications that are in right now to be subject to these new requirements. So they could get the bonus, but they could also be subject to a 270-day delay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm okay with that. I think they're good tools. Might as well get them out there.
So we'll work with Peter to see if we can do that, how we can do that.
Yeah.
Penny, we'll just make sure on that 270-day language that it's clear in terms of when it starts. You seem to...
Okay, but stop right there, David. I want closure right now from all of you, please, on the 270 days.
I would support 270 from the filing of the HAIS, since if a homeowner is really in a hot, bothered hurry, they can actually go out and get it.
So Andy's he's come over to the dark side now.
I'm fine with that.
Is giving you guys more time.
I'm on the dark side with Andy.
Okay. John, you're never going to get along, but that's going to
happen.
Okay. David, let's go. Move forward.
So it's, I'm sorry, 270 days from when the commission determines it's significant?
Yes.
From the date that the HAIS is filed.
And determined complete, right?
Yep. So yeah, the HAIS has to be accepted by
the LPC, right?
Okay. You're going to go back to the date it was filed.
Well, the HAIS is filed on like day 1, and then it'll be determined, it'll be examined by the LPC, and sometimes they say it's not complete. Go fix A, B, and C.
So if it's not complete, it's from the filing of a complete HAIS that's accepted by the LPC.
Okay, got it.
How about, you know what, how about
Jack, you just picked up 2 months. No more.
Well, no, I'm just saying to clarify, how about from the date that the LPC determines that it's complete, rather than, because otherwise.
No, I like actually creating an incentive to move this thing faster.
Yeah.
And getting people incentivized to actually get the HIAS up front. I like that as an idea.
And it's a good control point too, because it's got the date stamp on it. So as far as Louise talking about building the file, I mean, everything starts to come together on that. David, continue.
Okay. We'll make sure the language is clear about, in terms of the improvements that are made, that it's preserving the front of the building, as well as any other features identified in the HIAS as being significant.
Instead of saying front, can you just say whatever features HIAS recommends?
I think we're always worried about the front. I can't imagine.
Wait a minute, compromise time. How about street facing facades?
Nice.
And forget and don't worry about the neighbors. So.
Yeah, I know. Don't get me started on that.
Yep.
I hear you, John.
Chris, is that difficult to identify?
No, it isn't.
So a good example, Rob, would be like Rob's neighbor has the architecturally significant home, but on the back of the house, puts a pre-engineered metal building with metal siding.
Right.
How are you gonna like that, Rob?
I'd blow it up.
Right. I mean, and that can happen.
Solution. Good.
And that can happen. Someone's gonna think that that's architecture.
It depends on how it's painted.
Okay, let's keep it moving. David, back to you.
Okay, and then there will not be a sunset clause when I saw
whereas.
Just a whereas.
Just a whereas. We'll change the language about make sure it's a current survey. And then in terms of properties previously found to be significant or designated a landmark, they will not be eligible for the density bonus on the effective date of the ordinance.
Question on that point, David. If a house is found significant, it's usually in the process of being torn down.
Yes, there are a few that were not torn down, but had previously been found.
I would give
to
the
be
20%.
I got you.
Okay, why would they not?
Yeah.
Why would they not be eligible?
Because
I understand.
Well, Penny.
Yeah.
The reason why they're not eligible is we don't have an HIAS on file.
No, they all do, don't they?
No. I think in a case of houses that have been previously found to be historically or architecturally significant, there would be an HIAS.
Yeah.
I got an idea. We've got this other process. They can apply for the 20%. That's the process. So we don't have to cover the previously determined ones. If they want the 20%, they can come in and say, you already found me significant, give me the 20%.
So they have to go through a process.
Yeah.
To make sure we've got what we need.
Right.
Okay.
But I don't think it's fair to make them go for a zoning or, my brain's dead. You know what I mean?
Variance.
Yeah, right, exactly. They shouldn't have to go through all that. That doesn't seem fair.
David, how many houses would this cover right now? Not that many.
Well, it'd be all the landmarks. So that's 31. I couldn't tell you of those in the last 20 years that were designated but not torn down. It's probably a handful.
They can come in.
I'm not comfortable giving 30 houses 20 more %.
They would have to come in and ask.
They would have to come in.
Right, and what's the technicality for not giving it to them?
They would still have to come in.
Why would they be a separate class?
They're not. They're just as they are now, as they exist.
We've got a process that already covers them is kind of my point.
Yeah, they just wouldn't automatically get to 20% is what I'm saying.
Right, they have to come in.
Okay. All right.
David?
Okay, and then Jack, about the 270 days, that language is to the intent of the language was that that's the maximum the commission could impose.
Yeah.
It could be less.
No, I understand. I understand. I think now with the modification that
okay.
the not to exceed is less important.
Okay. Unless there was something else that I missed.
There was nothing else.
And we're all sent on vacation to the Bahamas.
You've got everything.
There's a possibility to convince me.
We don't have to talk about this again. We can go ahead and get the ordinance out for March 2nd, is it, or the 3rd?
Yeah,
3rd.
2nd.
Do we want to have a chance to review it again before a public hearing? There's a lot of changes, I think.
We'll review it and then.
Yeah.
We'll get it we'll get it, before we put it up for public hearing.
You can always
Still 2 readings.
You can always introduce, and then you got 2 more weeks to kick it around before we actually adopt it. So
yeah, because this isn't the introduction. This was clarification.
And what's our plan to notify the public of this meeting?
It's a public hearing.
I know, but
statutory method.
Yeah.
Well, it would go out in the email blast that goes out.
Correct.
We've got 2 more meetings on this.
I'll wear a sandwich board.
Rob will walk around town wearing.
and in the way it's publicized, is it gonna say we're making it more difficult to tear down homes, so that people really get a sense of what we're doing and the property rights and all that?
Well, I think we need to have a paragraph that describes what the whole process is and what the council is contemplating.
And
the benefits too.
Yeah, I mean, it's to provide tools to encourage.
So in the
not just punitive.
Oh no! I mean, but we'll put it out there, sir, so that everyone who reads our email blasts will at least be informed of it. If they want to stop by and talk, let's do it.
We do it how we've done it for the last 20 years. How we inform people. We don't do anything more or less. We do it the way we've done it.
So we'll make sure that there's proper context in the email blast, but we'll also have it noticed on our webpage. It gets a lot of traffic.
All right, thanks.
So we're good. Peter, you've got what you need. David, you've got what you need. Everybody's happy with it generally. Enough to move it to a vote and get it off the agenda, right?
Yep.
So it sounds good. All right. We'll move along then. And thank you everybody out there who stuck around to listen to the crazy conversation for the last 2 hours. Move forward. Item number 10, new business. We have none. Okay, appointments. I do have 2 appointments this evening. The first one is, may I have a motion to reappoint John O'Malley to a full 2-year term on the Police Pension Board.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Coladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
That motion carries. Additionally, may I have a motion to reappoint Fuad Cotter to a 1-year term on the Police Pension Board?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Coladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. All right, item 12, closed session. There is none this evening. And item 13, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Coladarchi?
Yes.
Motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
you. Thank you very much.
I'm